Thank you, Adsidi, and thank you very much, everybody, for coming. So this talk, this talk very nearly didn't actually. I wasn't very nearly wasn't able to be here for this talk actually. So had coronavirus not descended on us, I would at this very moment, in fact, be in the skies above the Caribbean. So and it would have been my second visit to Cuba. So this time last year, I visited Cuba for the very first time, and whilst I thoroughly enjoyed the trip there, actually the most interesting part of it for me was the journey there. And in a sense, it's a little bit, the situation was a little bit like the situation we find ourselves in at the moment. So we're sort of contained, we're sealed into a very confined sort of space. And we're sort of on a long haul flight at the moment, where you know, we've had no time really to prepare for it. And for me, actually, I in the past I've had to spend quite a bit of time before I go on a flight to prepare for it, because I have had quite a lot of anxiety around it. And in fact, the last time I'd been on a long haul flight before I went to Cuba last year was in 2000. In fact, I recall very vividly in the time just after 9/11, when I went on a flight about a week after, actually. So at the time, my brother had a CD player, and I remember buying a CD at the airport, and I plugged it into the CD player and put the earphones in, and it was interesting. My state of mind actually was much better. I was able to actually zone out from the flight, and it calmed me down. And so all the things that I had in terms of the anxiety, for at least a brief amount of time, the feeling of falling, the feeling of well, lack of control, right? So you know, that's what freedom or lack of freedom is lack of control. Those, for at least a temporary respite, were gone. And so this sort of became a sort of ritual. You know, for any flight I would take, I would put my earphones in, and I would not want to look out the window at all. So in 2018, I encountered the Dharma for the first time, and something significant changed, and it was noticeable. But the change actually was quite a gradual and subtle one. And I believe that meditation and other aspects of practice help with this. It was very hard to sort of pinpoint what exactly was the thing. So in December of that year, I visited Europe, and I was actually quite shocked to discover that I just didn't need to put my earphones in. I thought, this is odd. So fast forward to April last year, and as my trip to Cuba was approaching, I was thinking, well, you know, am I gonna you know, am I gonna be okay? I mean, a 2-hour flight to Europe is one thing, but a 9-hour flight? I thought I would, you know, it would be one of the most, I guess, painful kind of experiences, or horrible experiences, because of what I thought would happen. And what I discovered is that my anxiety had just gone. Like I in fact, yeah, I mean, I had a seat that was, I could look down at the Atlantic Ocean, basically, and I hadn't that feeling of just dread had just gone, and I was no longer really trapped by this sensation. And I remember actually very vividly, as we were just approaching Florida on our way to Cuba, and the sun was descending. It was red sky and the lights of Miami, and just thinking, how on earth had I got to this place? What happened? It was quite an amazing experience, and I think for me, this is really where freedom lies. Actually, if we look at the phrase from the Buddha, so just as in the great ocean there is but one taste, the taste of salt, so in the doctrine and discipline, there is but one taste, the taste of freedom. And so this is the sort of freedom that the Buddha is talking about. It's different from the sort of freedom. It's a spiritual freedom, which is different from a freedom by license or by right, by rights granted to us. And for me, this is the most important sort of freedom, actually. So the current lockdown that we're experiencing, the current social isolation that we're experiencing, is strangely familiar to me, actually, because for 3 years of my life, for the most part, I spent it alone, actually. I have a house up in Scotland, and I was living up there, and most of the time, I mean, I would see someone if I would go across the road and get some shopping, and maybe do that once a week or something like that. But for most of the time, I was by myself, and although I consider myself to be free, you know, I had no one to answer for, and I was at liberty to spend my days as I pleased. I had actually come to realize at the end of that time that I was in some way trapped by this life that I was leading, actually. And I decided, and it was quite a sudden and dramatic change, actually, that I would come down to Cambridge, and I would build a life for myself, be more social, and try to understand actually what happened to bring me to that point that I got to in life. And I don't think it's a coincidence at all that I encountered Buddhism at just this point in life, actually. And in some ways, I think it goes in both directions, that this sort of awakening, this realization occurred at the same time as encountering the Dharma, actually. And specifically through being taught meditation. In fact, the first meditation I was taught was the Metta Bhavana. So it's that particular practice has been incredibly enriching. So as I've spent more time learning about Buddhism, I found it supported me in many ways, actually. So thanks to the Sangha, I have many more friends now than I ever had earlier in my life, and those friendships the spiritual friendships in particular are far richer than any friendship I've had previously. And so the practice of meditation and the practice of the ethical precepts has helped me to cultivate much more skillful mindsets than I've had in the past, and without Buddhism, I don't think that would have been possible, really. I mean, I still find myself slipping back into some of those old modes, but I now have more understanding of where they come from, and can be more compassionate with myself when I do slip back. So perhaps the most direct experience I had of freedom in this sense, in the sense that the Buddha was talking about, came at the end of the Meditation 1 course. So we had a practice day, and I turned up at the center, and I had lots of very negative thoughts, very not very compassionate, self-compassionate thoughts. And we had a tea break, so we had a sort of silent tea break. And I sat down, and I just thought to myself about an idea of a volume control on my thoughts, and I thought, what happens if I turn them down? And I did, and it just went away, and all these thoughts, this negativity just completely vanished, and that feeling of sort of bliss and the lightening of that load, that to me showed me that true freedom actually was possible, and that is the sort of freedom that Buddhism has given me. So yeah, and so that's what I've been trying to practice more of, and to cultivate more of, and cultivate my gratitude as well for the Sangha and what that's brought to me. So yeah, so I just want to thank you everyone for listening to my talk.